Spoilers for Oshinoko Episode 1 and the first 10 chapters of the manga. Obviously. Oshinoko has been making waves in the anime community, and for good reason, as it had one of the best first episodes I've seen in a very long time, perhaps since Wonder Egg Priority. Though unlike Wonder Egg Priority, God bless its soul, I feel that Oshinoko will go down as a classic, as its premiere blew me away in almost every regard. From its gorgeous presentation delivered by Doga Kobo, a studio that I honestly didn't have much faith in, to its insanely talented voice cast, and the complete ear candy of a soundtrack to boot, it seriously has a lot going for it. But I think what made this anime stand out so much is its incredibly bizarre premise. Now, full disclosure, I knew nothing about Oshinoko before watching the first episode. All I knew about it was that there was a gynecologist, an idol that had kids, and that it was written by Aka Akasaka, creator of one of my favorite manga ever, Kaguya-sama Love is War. I've seen out of context panels float around on Twitter before, so I knew that it had a gorgeous art style, but besides that, I had zero knowledge of what goes on in this story. And let me tell you, I am so incredibly glad that I was able to go in blind, because it made this episode hit that much harder. Seeing the plot get increasingly more complex with each passing minute made it such an engaging viewing experience, and the most impressive part about it all is that the plot would have been great even if you stripped away most of these details by the end. Had this just been a story about an idol concealing her kids while aiming for the top of the entertainment industry like the first 15 minutes led you to believe, I would have been locked in for the long run. But then they added on the concept of reincarnation and once again led you to believe it was going to be about watching these twins propel their mom into fame, only to throw one last curveball and kill her off by the end of the episode. It was basically one big roller coaster ride, flipping your expectations on their head at every turn and keeping you guessing as to where the story could go, and no matter where it stopped, you were guaranteed an absolute banger of a premise. Seriously, any one of these plot threads could have been an amazing anime on their own. With that being said though, I'm sure there's people out there that find Ai's death to be unnecessary, since as I just said, the story would have been interesting enough without it. And while I understand that sentiment, I truly think this was the best possible outcome. For the viewers I mean, not for Ai, cause she's dead. Like, super dead. It was the best outcome for the sake of the narrative as it was the perfect way to end the prologue. The entire episode was spent carefully characterizing our three main leads and putting each of them through tragedy. And her death was essentially everything coming back full circle and hammered home how cruel the real world is, as well as how cruel the entertainment world is. Her death sparked a real motivation for our two main protagonists, as while she was alive, they simply desired to help her become a superstar, as they still viewed her as their beloved idol instead of their mother. And after having that connection severed, they both seem to be heading in two opposite directions that has loads of potential going forward. And most importantly, her death meant that we got to see this kick-ass frame, and that by itself was worth it. I say kill her again. While I clearly think this was a great episode by itself, there comes the question of how much this succeeded as an adaptation of its source material. I ended up enjoying the first episode so much that I decided to give the manga a read, and while I'm not that far into it as of right now, I did get the chance to read all of the prologue. And honestly, I think the anime far exceeds its manga counterpart so far. Going back to Ai's death, I'm a very big fan of the way the anime handled it because it felt so shocking and was a massive gut punch when it happened. Whereas the manga kinda televises that it's going to happen from a mile away by starting off each chapter having characters allude to the fact that something happened to Ai. So by the time she eventually got murdered, it lost a lot of its impact since you kinda knew to start preparing for something to happen to her. Yeah, I know I watched the episode before reading it, so of course I had known she was going to die anyways, but I still feel like televising it like that was a bad decision that I'm very glad the anime decided to exclude. I also think condensing all 10 chapters into a singular episode was a genius idea, as had this been adapted at a normal pace, we wouldn't have gotten to her death until episode 4 or so, and we wouldn't have known the actual premise of the show until halfway through its season. Yes, the first episode was 90 minutes long, so it was practically a movie, but it kept me engaged the entire time, and I honestly think if you can get away with having a premiere episode be this long, you should go for it. Oshi no Ko had a phenomenal first episode as both a standalone product and as an adaptation. It wasn't a To Your Eternity situation where that first episode was so good that I did not feel like watching the rest of the show. It instead left me with loads of questions and characters I want to see grow and overcome adversity. And it's a series that I just can't wait to see more of. But let me know what you thought of Oshi no Ko. Did you think its first episode was worthy of the hype, or is it overrated? Personally, for me, it was so good that I decided to pause writing my scripts for my next video so I can talk about it for a quick second. Subscribe so you can watch that when it drops, by the way. And let me know what you think the best first episode of anime is. It's Yudu Camp, by the way.